Hey everybody, so I wanted to make a quick video for you all as we begin to launch the countdown until our midterm papers are due. I wanted to start by just giving you highlighting some of the logistics of the midterm papers. So these essays are your first sort of formal paper of the semester. They should be 3 to 5 pages, double spaced, Times New Roman font, MLA style citations. You have two MLA guides, links to the library guide through Rutgers, and also the Purdue OWL site to help you if you have questions regarding proper MLA citation, both in-text citations as well as a works cited page. There are resources there available for you under modules. And you can also always email me if you have specific citation questions. It's better to ask than to just take a guess. So 3 to 5 double-spaced pages, Times New Roman, 1-inch margins around the side, MLA style heading, page numbers. So these are your basic formatting guides for these essays. They will be due right before spring break, so Friday, March 12th by 5 p.m. Okay, you're going to upload them under the assignments tab, preferably as a Word document, but you can also submit PDFs. So those are sort of the basics of this essay. So I wanted to also talk you through some of the expectations for these papers. Firstly, these essays are designed to be a close comparative textual analysis of 2 and no more than 3 texts, okay? Under the assignments tab right now, you have a list of potential prompts that you can use. Each of them highlight a different theme that we have been discussing in our discussion forums throughout the semester thus far. You are going to choose one of these prompts to respond to. You should not be trying to tackle all of them, obviously. You should respond to one of these prompts. And I have given you, underneath the actual question, I've given you some suggestions for texts that you may want to put into conversation with one another. But you do have some flexibility, okay, to decide what texts you want to draw from the semester. Choose texts that obviously, speak directly to the prompt itself so that you give yourself a good amount of material to work with. But also choose texts that you found yourself really drawn to in our discussion forums, especially if you had a particularly insightful or provocative initial post, or if you had an interesting kind of back and forth or dialogue with one of your peers for one of the texts. Go back to the forum, read through, utilize the work that you've already done in order to sort of expand upon and develop further your ideas. That's sort of the purpose of the discussion forums, right? It's to give you a sort of regular, informal forum to read the text, discuss the text, begin to flush out some of your ideas in response to these texts. And give you the opportunity to start formalizing your analysis and the way that you're processing through some of these stories that we're reading. So go back through there. The essay itself, again, should be a close textual analysis, engaging 2 and no more than 3. The reason for that is if you start to talk about more than 3 of the texts that we've read, you'll probably write a more summary-based or superficial essay as opposed to doing the kind of deep analytical work that this particular essay is asking you to do, okay? So of course you want to make sure that you are structuring your essay to not be sort of, one essay about this particular work, another paragraph about this particular work. You want to make sure that you're structuring all of your paragraphs, incorporating both texts within the same paragraph, okay? This will give you an opportunity to not think about them independent of one another. That's not the goal, right? The goal is to say, okay, here's my prompt, here's my theme that I'm talking about. I need to now take these two texts that come from two different traditions, different cultures, different time periods, different languages, and see the ways in which they have been produced from these cultures, and then how they resonate with one another. How do they contradict one another? How do they complicate one another? How might they expand upon one another? So you can take whatever position you want, but the goal, of course, is to really think about these texts in consideration with one another, as opposed to as independent entities, okay? So make sure that you are structuring your body paragraphs to include both texts, or if you're using three texts, all three texts within the same body paragraph, as opposed to sort of alternating one text in one paragraph, one text in another paragraph, etc. This will help you do that kind of sort of close comparative analysis that's being asked of you. Okay, introductions. You can find a lot of information about sort of paper writing 101, and forgive me, I'm sure a lot of you already know this, but that resource is also available to you under modules. You should review it. In your introduction, please make sure to obviously introduce the text that you are going to be talking about, the authors, if they are known, you want to also include, and in your introductions and throughout your essay, you should be, since this is a comparative literature course, consciously aware of the context from which these texts have been produced. None of these texts were written in a bubble. They come out of a culture. They come out of a literary tradition. They come out of a linguistic tradition. So you want to utilize some of the lecture notes or some of the introductions that we've read within our text, some of the scholarly introductions that we've read, for Yellow Woman, for example, from our textbook, or even some of the scholarly introductions by Paul Woodruff for Bacchae. Use some of that knowledge to help you situate these texts in your introductions, and then that sort of perspective should be echoed throughout your paper so that you are sort of taking into account the traditions that these texts have been sort of produced out of. Okay. Another thing that I want to mention is underneath the resources for your essays, you will also find a grading rubric. Okay, it says grading criteria for comparative analytical essays. Here I've given you the rubric that I will use in order to evaluate your essays. In the spirit of transparency, and giving you all of this sort of information and these guidelines to keep in mind. I would print this out and keep it next to you, essentially, so that you have a kind of way to check your work and evaluate your work and make sure that you are on track in terms of what the expectations are. You can read through this thoroughly. I'll highlight, a couple of points just for the A, the B plus level essays. All of them will have in their introductions, clear introductions of the texts, the consideration of the context that these texts have been that they come out of course, the authors, again, if there are any, and then really the most important part, of course, is your thesis statement, right? What is a thesis statement? It is the anchor for your essay, right? It is the original claim that you are making in your paper. This should not be a kind of observation. It should be an actual argument, meaning somebody else could argue this point from a different perspective, not even just a contrary perspective, but from a multitude of different perspectives. That's sort of how you know you have an argument, a claim at stake, right? And it should be a claim that you yourself are making. It should be an answer, essentially, to the prompt that you choose. And it should be a clear way in which you are trying to engage the text that you have chosen, okay? So those higher regarded essays, the A's, the B pluses, they will all have a clear, articulate, provocative, and original claim as expressed in your thesis statement, okay? In terms of work with assigned texts, those, higher graded essays will engage with textual evidence, right? Essentially, you have to think of yourselves as almost lawyers, right? You're making a claim, you have an argument, that is the anchor for your essay. How do you convince your reader to sort of see and agree with your point of view? Well, you have to provide evidence, right? It's the same concept when it comes to writing essays, except you're going to be providing textual evidence. What does that mean? That means you're going to be providing specific, well-chosen quotes to help support or elucidate the ideas that you're trying to express in your body paragraphs. You will do that for both or all of the texts that you are going to be engaging. So if you are dealing with two particular texts in a body paragraph, you will make sure that you include one quote from one text, one quote from another, just to sort of balance out the analysis, the attention that you're giving to both of the texts that you're discussing, okay? These A, B plus papers will also have clear topic sentences to kick off their body paragraphs. These topic sentences should essentially tell your reader what the main focus will be for that particular body paragraph. And it should reflect upon your thesis, obviously, right? It should be an extension of point one of my thesis. Here's the first way that I'm going to basically support my claim, support my argument. So they will have clear topic sentences, they will have well-chosen and persuasive moments of textual evidence, and they will also engage, unpack that textual evidence. It's not quite enough just to say, well, here's my claim, here's a quote, moving on, right? It's here's my claim, here's a quote, and here's how that quote matters. Here's why it's important. Here's how it supports my idea, right? And it will also transition smoothly and fluidly between the essays. You might want to use linking words like moreover, however, contrastingly, similarly, right? A way to kind of connect the idea and the relationship between the two texts in a fluid way, okay? So you'll have topic sentences, clear textual evidence that is persuasive, and an engagement with that textual evidence as a means of sort of showing your reader and demonstrating to your reader how that piece of textual evidence, why it matters, and how it actually helps to support your point of view. You'll also, be proofreading these essays. You will have, adhering to, guidelines for punctuation, capitalization, breaking your paragraphs appropriately, all of the sort of cosmetic issues that you want to be mindful of. Make sure that you do proofread your essays thoroughly. I always tell students it's a great idea to print out your essays actually, so that you have a hard copy of them if you can, if you have a printer. If not, read your essays out loud from your computers. Read them to your parents, to your siblings, to your dog, I don't care, the mailman, whomever, the mail person, whomever, just to hear your writing. When we're reading on a screen, our brains tend to autocorrect for us. But when we actually have to pause and look at what's on the page and take our time, we tend to hear when we are in need of additional punctuation, when we have a run-on sentence, when we're writing in the passive voice, when our language is choppy, for example, when we need to work on smoother transitions between texts. So you'll hear some of these more structural issues much more easily and readily if you read your work out loud. So read your work out loud. Try to do that. Weaker essays will not have or will have the start of some kind of working argument, but perhaps it's more of a, sort of observational statement about the text. The Bacchae or female agency in the Bacchae and yellow woman can be compared and contrasted. It's sort of just a blanket statement. There's no real argument at stake. I can't tell what your specific, I can't tell what your specific argument is, what claim that you are going to be making in your essay, and that's obviously problematic. So that will be an indicator of a sort of weaker essay. Not providing textual evidence is obviously a big problem, or providing textual evidence that doesn't quite fit it doesn't sort of align or do any work for you, right, in terms of the argument that you're trying to make. Make sure the textual evidence that you choose clearly does support the argument that you're trying to make. That's important. Weaker essays will have more structural problems. Perhaps they don't have any topic sentences. Perhaps, structurally the language showcases a lack of proofreading. And I don't mean like I missed a comma or I used a semicolon instead of a colon or something, minor like that happens in essays. I'm not really talking so much about that. I'm talking about patterns of error that start to impede your meaning, make it harder to actually read and understand what you're writing. That's the level of structural incoherence that I'm talking about that would, sort of render a lower grade. So take a close look at the grading rubric again, just so that you're clear about sort of the guidelines for the midterm essay. I mean, the same guidelines essentially apply for your final essay. It'll just be a little bit longer, but we'll get to that at another time. So what do you need to do right now? I would be reviewing some of these resources that I provided for you under modules. I've even provided sample midterm essays from previous students. If you want to take a look at it, like a sort of, A, B plus range essay, that could give you a good idea of sort of what's expected. So you can read through that. And you can also read through some of the supplemental resources that I've uploaded for you, including this sort of grading rubric, again, to familiar yourself with how I will be evaluating your work. All right, so we are reading our fairy tales this week. So we'll have one more week of reading and discussion in our forums, and then we are going to be taking a pause from reading new material, and we're going to be exclusively working on writing. The week starting, I believe, the 8th. Okay, so the week of the 8th, your essay is due on the 12th, but that week will be sort of a writing, drafting, workshopping week, right? Writing, as I said in my email, in my announcement, is a process, and you expositors know this very well. And I'm sorry to even bring that up and drum up the trauma, but it is a process, and you should have a little bit of time to work through that process, whether that means outlining, whether that means drafting. We are going to be doing a little bit of a workshop that week on Wednesday, the 10th. I'm going to ask that you post your working introductions or even just a thesis statement so that you can get a little bit of feedback from me, from your peers, so you have some kind of feedback on your work before you have to actually submit it at the end of the week. I'm also offering individual conferences that week. You can sign up for a time. I'll be sending out a Zoom link. You can talk to me, workshop some of your ideas, ask specific questions. So that's available to you too. If it works within your schedule, that is optional, obviously. I know you're all busy with other classes, working, caretaking, etc. So this is just, an option for you to take advantage of if you need it, if you want it. It is available to you. And of course, you could always write me, at any point, or log on to my office hours on Wednesdays. Those are live via Zoom from 10 to 11 a.m. You can log on then if you have questions for me this week, next week, etc. Okay. So I think that's all I wanted to say about midterm essays. If you have questions, like I just said, in the meantime, before we get to our workshopping week, please feel free to reach out and be in touch. If you want to write on a topic that I'm not offering as in one of the prompts, if you have an idea that you want to pursue, I'm all about that. I think you will write more compelling papers if you're writing on a subject or a topic that you are invested in and interested in. So if you want to do that, that's fine. You just have to reach out to me as soon as possible so that I can make sure that you're on the right track. Okay? That's it for now. All right. You're doing a great job, everybody. Stay the course. I know this is a weird semester. I know it feels very disembodied. But I am actually here and happy to help in any way I can. Okay? All right, onward. Take care. Bye.